What's up, you guys? This is your host, Andrea, with From Mrs. to Ms. I am happy to have someone wonderful joining me today. I have Laura Caruso here with me today. How are you, Laura?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. Welcome to From Mrs. to Ms.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Going to do a quick introduction of you. Laura Caruso, she's a founder, psychotherapist, and clinical supervisor. Laura is a relationship expert and dating coach based in New York City, known for her authentic and straightforward approach. I like it already. With the focus on relational dynamics, she helps clients break free from self-limiting patterns and cultivate meaningful, deeply connected relationships. Outside of her practice, Laura enjoys spending time with her golden retriever and planning her next adventure, often en route to JFK. She is also writing a nonfiction book that explores the intersection of human connection, empathy, culture, and sociopolitics, combining the passions that make her feel whole. Wonderful. I love all of this. Now, I love that you are a relationship expert because I have a lot of great questions that the audience has been asking me to ask. So I'm like, I'm going to hammer you a little bit with those.
Yeah. Don't we all have those questions, right?
We do. So let's go back to the beginning. What inspired you to pursue a career in psychotherapy, and how did you end up specializing in relationships and dating?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I'm actually a career changer. So I was a speech therapist originally. I had a whole private practice in New York City. And then I worked in a special education school with a bunch of children who were super high level, but ADHD, language delay disorder. So these kids who kind of slip through the cracks in mainstream education and they needed a little bit more support, but it wasn't significant enough for people to really pick up on it. And then they came to my school and they got all the support and they started to thrive. And when they didn't thrive, I realized it was very much connected to mental health. And if kids didn't feel supported, if they didn't feel safe, and if they didn't feel like they had a space to truly be themselves, they wouldn't make progress towards their speech and language goals. So that's really what encouraged me to go back to school. And then when I told everyone in my life that I was going to become a therapist, everyone said, "Oh yeah, that just makes sense." So I fell pretty naturally into the career once I decided I wanted to go back to school. And then my own life experiences, right? My own relationships, my own family history that led me right into the whole relational track.
So funny. I think that happens with a lot of people. I know it happened for me, just kind of being married, divorced, and then coming out to this dating world. I just started talking about, these crazy online dating stories. The first
Yeah,
20 episodes I have out are all my crazy dating stories. And then it just kind of morphed into like, I really want to understand this whole dating situation and relationships and how it
absolutely.
makes sense. So it's become
Absolutely.
quite the thing. I think everybody is really interested in fully understanding how it all works. So I don't blame you for
I
going down.
agree. I even see that as well in my content online. I see that people gravitate more towards the dating content versus
Yeah.
the relationship content because dating is just a whole other animal and it's changed so much in the last 10, 15, 20 years and everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point. It's just changed so much and we don't really know what's right and wrong and what we're doing. I feel like we're kind of all over the place in the
Yeah,
dating world.
exactly.
Yeah, and we were even talking about, before we started recording, a little bit of the audience out there because you kind of geared more to the younger side for the age. I am more gearing towards midlife, but I am finding my audience is vastly huge in the 18 to 25 category, which is, I think that's good. It means they're trying to learn ahead of time, so that they can get to a good place when they are older and in those solid foundational relationships.
Yeah,
Crazy. It is crazy, girls.
absolutely.
What are some of the most common relationship challenges that you've seen in your practice, and how do you guide your clients through those?
Yeah, I think communication and emotional availability are the two that stand out to me.
Huge.
I think specifically in these cishet relationships, right, these male female relationships, the expectations and the standards are changing. Women are becoming more self aware. They need more from their partners and their relationships. And the men, because they're socialized entirely differently, right? They're taught don't feel your feelings, big boys don't cry, right? Man up. They're taught to not express their emotions. So developmentally, in terms of emotional intelligence, they're behind. So that's one of the biggest issues that I see is women saying, I need more. I need you to be emotionally available. I need to talk about feelings. And the men saying, I don't really know what to do. I don't know where to
Yeah.
start. right? So even just learning emotional vocabulary with my male clients, and then communication, right? A lot of people double down in their defenses and their patterns, and they're not aware of those patterns yet, or maybe they are aware, but they don't know how to change them. I think those are the two biggest things that I see.
I agree with that. And do you see that men are they changing a little bit from that? Are they starting to be more vulnerable, express their feelings? And maybe a lot of it has to do with what we're seeing today's world on social media. There's so much talk about relationships and communication. And maybe they're saying, hey, it's okay to be a little bit
Yeah.
vulnerable. I would think they're
I think they
seeing.
are. And I think, it's also adding a different layer of complexity to dating, because I think there's a lot of information out there, like you said, on social media. So people know the language, they know the terminology, they know to talk about boundaries and emotional availability, right? Things like that.
Fascinating.
But people don't
Toxicity.
necessarily know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're not in therapy, if they're not really working on it, if they're not understanding the complexity of it, they might not be changing. So it's adding a whole other layer to the dating world that people are really struggling with, right? Are they doing what they say they're doing, or are they not?
Exactly. So, how do you think individuals could identify and kind of break free from a lot of these self limiting patterns in their relationships? What kinds of things do you think they could do for that?
I think it really connects back to self-worth, right? Raise your self-worth, raise your relationship with yourself, right? Know who you are, know what you want in life, know what you want out of your relationships, and maintain that expectation. It doesn't mean that your partner is going to be absolutely perfect and they're going to make that expectation every single time or fulfill your needs to the level that you need them to. But you can have a conversation about it when they're not, right? And with that conversation comes change. And if the behavior doesn't change, then you need to maintain that boundary, right? You need to maintain that level of expectation of, no, this is the relationship that I want. And if it doesn't meet that expectation, then maybe it's not the right relationship for me. So I think we get stuck in these patterns because we don't know ourselves. We're too afraid to let go of something because we're associating our identity with it, right?
Hmm.
Just know who
Hmm.
you are.
Yeah, well said. And I think it is so rewarding to kind of see the growth in yourself. I've done that personally. I've done a bit of the journey and still working on it. I think you can always continually work on it, but actually identifying that and noticing that there's a change, a difference where I was like, gosh, I'm okay, like being by myself for multiple evenings in a row.
Absolutely.
So small things. I say it all the time. I was like perpetually dating and going out every night just to not be alone, to have something to do and to look forward to. And
Yeah.
now I got to swing it back a little. I'm almost like too happy, like
Yes.
doing my own thing. I really got to find that happy medium. But
Yep. I know
it's
that feeling
funny.
well. I just canceled plans tonight so that I could stay home by myself.
So
I'm with you.
went too far. We're a little
Yep.
too far on the spectrum now. We got to bring
I'm a
it down.
little too happy in my own environment.
I know it. So, what role you're talking about the self worth and self awareness does it play in building healthy relationships? So, once you're in that relationship, how can someone cultivate their self awareness within the relationship? Do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, self-worth informs how you show up in your relationship, right? It
Yeah.
informs what you talk about, it informs what you work on, it informs how you act in that relationship, right? So self-worth informs the foundation.
Mhm.
Beyond that, it's really important to check in with yourself and with your partner, right? All my couples who come into couples therapy, it is mandatory. Whether they do it or not is a different story, but it's mandatory for them to have weekly couples check-ins. And it's
Okay.
just a 20 to 30-minute meeting for them to say, hey, what went really well this week? What can we celebrate? And then what do we need to work on for the next week, right? Just so that your relationship is constantly growing and evolving in the way that it would at work. If you have a project at work, you're going to meet weekly about it until it's
Yeah.
completed, right? And relationships are no different. We just think they're different because we were taught that, oh, it's supposed to just work out and it's supposed to feel good. Relationships are hard. And as the world gets more and more complex and difficult, your relationships will too, right? It's
Yeah.
not like it was 50 years ago when life was much simpler, before technology, before access to things that are outside of our immediate
Oh
communities,
my God. It's like a whole
right?
different world. I
Whole
can't even.
different world.
No wonder
Whole
our
different world.
are so lost all the time, right? Like they're just.
Absolutely.
I mean, so many, elderly people that don't know how, to use computers and just be in the world of today. It has got to be shocking.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I
crazy.
even experience that now as well. And I'm 29, right?
Right?
With AI coming out. I had no idea what that meant. I said,
Yes.
they're just going to do it for me? What do you mean? And it's hard. My phone updates and I have no idea how to use it anymore, right? Like I understand, I empathize a lot more with people as, I get older because I get it. So it makes
Yeah.
me think as well, what are relationships? What is the world going to look like in 50 years from now? Right? It's going to be so different.
What are our kids going to look like when they're out? I
Exactly.
can't even imagine. My kids are so in tune with the internet and technology and social media and all
Yeah.
of that. But I mean, they grew up on that from the moment they were like young. We have them sitting
Yeah.
watching iPads and learning the way, as opposed to us having to learn it after we knew all the other stuff.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Exactly. We were dialing up and we couldn't use the phone line.
Rotary phones, and we would have somebody beep through, and then you're like,
Horrifying, right? To
recording
think that
machine.
that was like advanced tech.
It is crazy. I can't even imagine what else they can possibly come up with, but they never seem to amaze me.
Yeah, they keep
It's
coming
like
up with it.
always something new. And I'm like, wow. And how
Yeah,
did we not think of that? Like, who thought of that? I'm
exactly.
always like, there's got to be somebody. I always walk around going, okay, what is a problem that I could turn into some sort of invention, because there's
Right.
so many
I'm like, are
things.
there any problems left to solve? There's a lot of social problems, but are there like technological problems to solve?
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
so. I think they've gotten under control. Oh gosh, we're getting way off track here, but I love what you said. We can go on all day about that. But I love what you said about checking in. I think that is such a big thing, especially, like date nights, weekly date nights are a perfect opportunity to do a check in. I think, you can
Yeah.
start out the night by asking things that you look for, or how your week was, what you look forward to coming up to. I used to talk about when I would go on when I was in a relationship with a guy and we would go on our little weekly dates, and I would take a little baggie of questions that I had prepared of things that I didn't know about him or wanted to know about, things in his childhood or, his favorite things. And so we would order the food, and while we're waiting for the food, I would have him pull out 3 questions. And it
I
would
love
just
it.
engage, yeah, it engaged conversation with us instead of us sitting there on our phones. And we kind of
Exactly.
put the phones away and did that. And it was really helpful just to get to know him on a different level from that. I loved
Yeah,
it. I loved it.
I love it.
So in today's world, in this dating world, what are some key traits that make someone a more intentional and effective dater, do you think?
Vulnerability, right? So even
For
as you
sure.
were just telling that story, I'm thinking about so many people who are going to listen to this and say, I would never do that. That's so embarrassing, right? And what I say to clients in sessions when they say things like that is, do you want to date someone who's going to judge you for what you're doing, right? Are you going to date someone who wants to
Great
judge you
answer.
for having open and honest conversation? And then they sit back
Yes.
and say, you're right, you're right, right? So
Yeah.
be vulnerable, allow yourself to be honest with what you're looking for in a partner. Right? Most people
Yeah.
are looking for depth, connection, emotion, the chemistry. So go after it. Don't sit back and be the cool girl and hope that it works out, because it's not going to. So authenticity is really important as well. Um, Starting
And do you
there.
think that comes into like playing games and stuff? I think
Oh yeah.
we've gotten so out of hand with that. We're like, okay, don't call them for 3 days after, or you can't possibly reach out first. And I think a lot of that is what you said. Like, if it's the right person, who is really where you're going to text them if they really are into you and be like,
Exactly.
they're not, right? They're going to want to
Exactly. Exactly. And if they don't want to hear from you, they're not your person, right?
hear.
So being honest as well with what you're looking for,
Yeah.
right? Really make sure you know what kind of partner you're looking for to stand by your side, because if you don't, you're just dating everyone. And if you're dating
Yeah.
everyone, you're not dating anyone, right? You're
So
just
good.
hoping that it works.
I was dating everyone, Laura. Let me tell
Yep.
you.
We all were. I was a serial dater when I moved to New York City. I had 2 to 3 dates a week. But you know what? I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot about myself, and I had a lot of great experiences. But
Yeah.
then as I got more serious and I got older and I wanted a relationship, I became more intentional, right? So there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with serial dating. If
Yeah.
that's where you're at and you just want to have fun and have new experiences and learn things, go for it. Right?
Yeah.
There's always a time and a place for it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great idea for people that are just starting out to maybe do the dating apps or, kind of dipping their toe back in.
Yeah,
Just make it more of a fun thing and not so much pressure
exactly.
in it. I feel like I used to do a lot of pressure, like, please let this be a good one before I'd go out, instead of just enjoying it and being like, what, if it doesn't work, maybe I'll get a friend out of it, or maybe it's just not my person and I'll move on.
Exactly.
But it takes a lot of time and thoughts with yourself. And again, the self-love to understand that just might not be your person. We take things so offensively when they say things and we take it personally. And then you really just have to go, you know what? My person would love that.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's hard for people to do because we date with a scarcity mindset, right? There's what are we up to? 8 billion people in this world. There is
Yeah.
someone out there for you. I promise, right?
God,
There's
please,
no shortage of people.
please let there be. So how do
Yep.
you feel like attachment styles come into play and impact relationships? And what advice do you have for people navigating these insecure attachments? I love talking attachments.
hmm I know. It's funny. I just did 2 podcasts about attachments and I'm launching an attachment course on Sunday. So my whole world is revolving around attachment right now. I think a lot of people are much more insecurely attached than they might think.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will say to that is attachment can change, right? So as you do some of the work, as you learn more about yourself and your patterns and you start to change them, you can move towards a secure attachment, right? It doesn't mean you're always going to be anxious or avoidant or a combination of both. You
Yeah.
could be securely attached. But if you
Yeah.
find that you're in a relationship and your partner is explicitly doing things that are triggering your anxious or avoidant or a combination of both responses, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not the best relationship for you. And if you're
Yeah.
staying in it, it's probably because of that anxious attachment, right? If you know your partner is triggering some of these anxious or avoidant patterns within you, but you're choosing to stay, that's connected to your attachment, right?
Yeah.
That's connected to that scarcity mindset or that belief of, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve love, right? Anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
connected to the core beliefs underneath. Those usually come from childhood, right? And attachment
Yeah.
forms 0 to 7.
Wow. So for those who don't fully understand the attachment styles, can you just tell us a little bit more about them and maybe give us examples of what each kind is just so they know?
Yeah, there's 4. We'll start with the holy grail, right? Secure attachment. So securely attached people, they have trust, they have a healthy balance of independence and interdependence in the relationship because there's always a level of interdependence within a relationship. They have the ability to regulate their emotions. They're not afraid to approach conflict. They communicate really well and clearly. Then you have the anxious attachment, which is a pretty common one. The anxious attached clings, right? They need to be really near and close to their partner. And if they're not, they start to get anxious or spiral a little bit. Conflict is hard. You'll see a lot of people pleasers with the anxious attachment, also the avoidant attachment, honestly, because if their partner's happy, right? If I can keep my partner happy, then the relationship is safe. So the anxious attachments are always trying to hold on to that relationship for their own well-being. So there's a level of codependence there as well. Then you have the avoidant attachment, right? Avoidant needs time and space for everything. They need time
You're
and space
running
to
from that
process.
anxious.
They need time and space for all of it, right? And so if you get too close to your partner, then you start to pull back, right? It becomes really scary. So these avoidant attachments start to struggle with vulnerability, right? They struggle with closeness. The connection doesn't really deepen. It stays pretty surface level. In these relationships, you'll find that if you have an avoidant partner, you probably don't know a ton about them. They probably know everything about you.
Yeah.
And then you have a combination of both, right? Because why would it be so clear cut? There's a disorganized attachment, which is the anxious and the avoidant trap, right?
Yeah.
So that's the push and pull, the hot and cold. I get really close and then I pull back, right?
Yeah.
So these are the love bombers who is going to throw everything at you initially and then pull back and go distant. And it's tough. It's really tough to work through some of these patterns, and society has almost normalized a lot of it in some of these dating norms, right?
Mm.
That cool girl, that's avoidance. You're avoiding vulnerability, you're avoiding connection, you're avoiding honesty and authenticity,
Yeah.
right? At what cost?
Yeah. And so I think it's important to really discover what your attachment style is so you know what to fix or how to work on that and get to another place. What kinds of things could they do if they are like an anxious attachment? What are a few things they could do to at least get a little bit closer to the secure?
Yeah, I would start honestly by reading the book Attached. I think that's the gold standard entry into some of these conversations. I can't remember who it's written by at this point. I think his name is Daniel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book, and it'll teach you all about the different attachment styles and how they show up in relationships. And then
Mhm.
you just notice, right? When you start to notice that your relationship is breaking down or you need to communicate something, how do you respond?
Yeah.
Right? Journal about it, think about it, meditate about it, talk about it into the abyss if you need to, right? If therapy's not your thing, great, process it out loud. Just do it by yourself. I understand therapy's not for everyone. I'm not here to force everyone to go to therapy. I wish everyone would go to therapy. It's a different world if we all do, but I get
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
So talk about it. Talk to your friends, talk to your partner. Hey, when you did this, I noticed I pulled back a little bit. Or when you did this, I noticed that I started to spiral a little bit, right? Talk about it, bring it into the present moment, and that makes it tangible, which allows you to work on it.
Interesting. And do you think more people are anxious? Is that what you said? Most people are anxious, or?
It's tough to say. I think that's why we have the disorganized attachment, right? I mean, there's elements of everything. We all have elements of anxious and avoidant behaviors. It's just natural, right?
Right.
Sometimes we avoid things that we just don't want to do. And then sometimes we're anxious about things that we just don't want to let go of, or we just don't want to change. And that's okay too. We are human at the end of the day, right? There's no
Yeah.
perfect human. Even securely attached people make mistakes. But I would say it's pretty divided. And I would say there's a big gender influence as well, right? A lot of men are more avoidant and a lot of women are more anxious. And
Hmm.
think about how we're socialized, right? Women are socialized to take care of everyone around them and to
Yes.
anticipate everyone's needs from
You
such
worry
an
what you
early
worry.
age.
Mm.
Right? We're handed a doll at the age of 3 and here, take care of the baby. The baby's crying. What does the baby want to eat? Right? Whereas men are handed these little soldiers and G.I. Joe. I don't even know if G.I. Joe still
Yeah.
exists. G.I. Joe toys and trucks, and here, play with these big intense things and don't feel your feelings, right? And ew, don't play with dolls. Dolls are gross.
Yeah.
So we're socialized really, really differently from such a young age. And that conditioning sets us up for how we show up in our relationships or how we navigate emotions.
Yeah.
And then you have the parent and the caregiver attachment that informs the attachment style fully.
Yeah. So how they are kind of is how we become because we see it, right? As a mirror of what we should do and how we should react. I never really thought about that with the dolls and the trucks, but you're
Oh,
so
yeah.
right. We're trying to
Oh,
take
yeah.
care of this from a young age, and that's how we just grow up learning that. Wow, that's interesting. So, what are your thoughts on how societal and cultural shifts, like dating apps or hookup culture, has changed the way that we form connections?
Hmm. Oh my gosh, the gold standard question, right? It's constantly changing. I think relationships have become much more superficial and shallow. Even just playing on brain chemistry for a second, dating apps, dopamine, 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 dopamine. So what does that do to your brain chemistry? It makes you crave dopamine, right? So now we have all of these almost like hedonistic behaviors where people are just constantly seeking out dopamine and seeking out pleasure and joy. And if they're not getting it from a relationship, they're going to leave, right? But relationships aren't always pleasure and joy and happy, right? Sometimes they're difficult, and a lot of times they're difficult. And then sometimes they're stagnant because that's just what life is. So
Yeah.
people move on a lot faster, I think, which prevents people from getting deeper and more connected. Superficial and shallow because we're just looking at photos of people versus really getting to know someone. If you talk to someone, I call it in the wild now. It's really just in real life, right? While you're out
Right.
existing as a human, as humans do, but it seems so far from reality at this point. But if you meet someone in real life, you're going to go on a date with them because you felt a connection and you connected with them probably over things that you talked about and things that you had in common, not because of what they looked like. So it's changing the way people relate to others
Mhm.
and approach others. And I think that's pushing people further and further apart from each other.
Oh, so it's going the wrong way.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Seems so foreign to me to just meet somebody organically these days. It's like when
Yeah.
yeah, right? And when I just think
Yeah.
about it, I mean, my first thought is just to get on the dating app. Like that's my only
Yep.
option at this point.
Yeah.
So, what kinds of ideas could you give us for like how to meet someone organically? Where could you go? What are some good places to suggest to the listeners?
Yeah, even just speaking to the purpose of your audience, right?
Mhm.
After separation, I just went through a breakup and I texted every single person that I know in New York City, whether I've spoken to them in the past year or not. I texted them and I said, "Hey, I'm going through it. Please over invite me to everything right now," right? Whether I come or not is a different story, but just please invite me. And if I keep saying no, please keep inviting me, right? That doesn't mean I don't want to be there. It just means I don't have capacity.
That's a
And they
great idea.
did, right?
Yeah.
Your people will show up for you. All you have to do is ask for it because
Yeah.
everyone's busy, everyone's exhausted, everyone's thinking about themselves because that's what we do in this world, right? We're humans. But when you
Yes.
tell them that you need them, they usually show up for you. So put yourself out there. Tell your friends, "Hey, I'm trying to meet more people in person. If you're doing something with friends, if you're doing something with anyone, just invite me if it's a group thing," right? If, obviously, they're not going to invite you to one of their dates or a friend hang, but if it's a group thing, invite me. If you're going to a party, invite me, right?
Right.
Join organizations, join clubs. I started playing pickleball. And the
Me
pickleball
too.
gym, it's a big indoor place, so it's year round. They have socials where you just drop in, you pay $40, you go, you play pickleball for 2 hours. There's a bar on site if you want to stop and have drinks after with people that you meet. So there's ways to get involved, right? You
Yeah.
just have to talk to people. I go to
Yeah.
yoga twice a week. I used to never talk to anyone in the studio. Now that I'm single, I talk to people, because if I'm not talking, I'm probably not interacting with people throughout the week. So talk to them, right? All you have to do is initiate.
And that's also creating growth in yourself, because now you are becoming social, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I love that you connected that to my audience, because that is a big thing that I talk about after, divorce or tragedy, heartbreak, separation, like how to get back out there and what kinds of things to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, pickleball is a big one, although $40 in New York, huh? It's like 15.
So expensive. It is an expensive hobby.
That is, because that's per person. And then
Yes.
you want to bring a friend with you.
It's horrifying. Tennis in New York is even worse. It's like $200 a month just for the court rental. It's insane. Yeah,
So
New York is a whole different animal.
Pickleball is $40 just to go in and play for 2 hours. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, check it out.
Yep.
I mean, I thought it's 15 here in California, and I was still like, well, that's kind of a lot, to just go play.
Yeah, no, if you're in real estate, go buy an open warehouse, open a pickleball court, you'll make a killing.
I know all.
Literally.
Those are great ideas to go do stuff. So what advice do you have for couples who feel stuck in like cycles of conflict or disconnection with their partners? What can they do to kind of change that up a little bit?
Get help. Go see a couples therapist. It doesn't mean you need to be in couples therapy forever, but when you guys consistently try to work through these gridlocked problems, as we call it in the therapy world, you're just going to keep fighting, right?
Yeah.
If what you're doing isn't working, seek help from someone else.
Yeah.
You can go to 3 couple sessions to just learn how to communicate with each other or learn alternate solutions. If you don't want to go to couples therapy forever, that's fine, right? Go in, be very honest with the therapist and say, we're not sure we want to go to couples therapy, but we do need to work through this one thing. Can we just try it out with this one thing and go from there?
Oh, I love that.
If that is not open to you or if that's not available to you, do something else.
Yeah.
You try to approach it in the same way every single time. And what's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, but expecting a different result. Right. Reset, right? Allow yourself to reset and recalibrate and just let go of things. Sometimes we hold on to things too much because we need to feel validated in our hurt and we need to feel like our partner is changing for us. And, sometimes that's not realistic. Reset, right. Allow yourselves to let go, agree that you're starting over from square one. Right. And do something different at that time. You don't need to hold on to everything.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think that there's too soon to go to couples therapy? So say you start dating somebody and maybe 3 months in, you guys are you just can't seem to get on the same page. To me, I would think, oof, if we need to go to therapy after 3 months, this is maybe not the best relationship.
Yeah.
What is valid? Is that is there a time frame that is too soon? I think it is.
There's a lot of controversy in the psych world right now because a lot of people are talking about how people have become disposable because of how dating norms have changed and social norms have changed. And while I agree with that, I do think, like you said, there's a timeline. If you're 3 months into a relationship, you're supposed to be having great sex, having great times, right? You're not supposed to be fighting each other every single time you're with each other. Move on, right? Yeah, and really take a hard look at yourself. Are you contributing to that, right? Is there work that you need to do as well? Because are you creating friction, right? Maybe do some of that work yourself and then maybe come back to it. Or move on, do the work yourself, and then look for something that feels more aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that. I think it's just a little too early for something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's different if maybe you enter the relationship and you have a bunch of life things that happen that just cause a lot of stress, right? That might be a little bit different, but to just be fighting for no reason at 3 months in, find another person.
I agree. A lot of people like to kind of use that as a Band-Aid and go, well, hey, let's just do couples therapy and everything will be fine. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I do not want to go to couples therapy 3 months in with somebody because you hardly even know that person at all anyways.
Exactly.
kind of going into a therapy, like fighting about all of these things that you don't even know what it is you're fighting about, probably at that age.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know it's a tough one. How do you approach blending personal empowerment with vulnerability in relationships? And why is that balance so important?
Good question. Empowerment comes from self-understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
We feel empowerment is a feeling, right? So we feel empowered to do something, we feel empowered to act, and that comes from willingness to mess up, right? If we're not afraid to mess up, if we're not afraid to make mistakes, if we're not afraid to sometimes unintentionally hurt people and work through that, then usually we're going to approach our relationships with a bit more feeling of empowerment, right? And it's important because we are human at the end of the day. Humans hurt other humans. We're
Yeah.
not perfect. We make mistakes even when we're trying not to make mistakes, right? So having the courage to have those conversations of, hey, I'm really sorry that hurt you, right? I'm really sorry I did that. And how can we move forward, right? How can we do something differently? That also then it goes right back to that cycle of empowerment, right? The
Mm-hmm.
more success you have in your relationship with communicating, with working through things, the more confident and empowered you feel to continue doing that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's necessarily a personal approach. I think relationships are always dynamic. And in relationship to yourself, that's still dynamic. It still involves this ongoing cycle of back and forth with yourself, same as if you're with another person.
Yeah. Those are great points. So for singles who feel like they've been unlucky in love, how do you help them stay hopeful and motivated? It can be so discouraging
Mm-hmm.
and scary.
Mm-hmm. Am I allowed to curse on your
Of
podcast? Is that allowed?
course, of course.
I
Say
was
what
going
you
to
want.
say, you left out in the introduction that I'm a no bullshit therapist. So, what I
Yes.
have to say to that, a little bit of tough love, you're not
Uh-huh.
unlucky. I
Yeah.
hate to break it to you, right? You are responsible for your own reality. And if you're telling yourself that you're unlucky, you're going to be unlucky, right? We all have our shit. We all have things that happen to us. We all have things that happen because of us. But
Mm-hmm.
your experiences don't define who you are, right? If you continue to sit there and say, this happened to me, this is so bad, this is so blah, 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 right? Your life is going to continue to feel that way. I'm a therapist for a reason. I'm a trauma therapist for a reason, right? I had an abusive relationship. I'm not going to sit here and say, my abusive relationship ruined my life. Did it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? But did I also learn a whole heck of a lot? 100%. Because
Yes.
that relationship broke me down to absolutely nothing and I rebuilt myself. Right? And with that comes empowerment, confidence, courage, do something different. If
Yeah.
you need to blow it all up just to rebuild, do it. Right? But you're not unlucky because it's your own reality that you're creating.
Love that. I love that. So how long do you think it takes? And I know everybody's different, but when you go through like a traumatic relationship like that, that does completely break you down. For those that are out there that are struggling to get back up and get on that horse, what is a time frame? Like, do you just give yourself a certain period of time to sit in it and dwell on it and, just feel the pain, and then you got to get the fuck up, right? Like,
Exactly.
that's it.
It's a good question. Like you said, everyone's different. My
Yeah.
abusive relationship ended in September. I moved to Italy in January. So I have this tendency to just flee. And that's what I needed to do. I wasn't ready to confront anything. And that's okay too, right? If that's how you're going to address it, if that's how you're going to work through it, that's fine. But you're going to have to come back to the hurt, right? I
It's
don't
something
necessarily, I
to
call
deal
it,
with.
yeah, I call it sitting in the suck, right? You don't have to sit in the suck 24/7, but you do have to sit in it a little bit to process it and to really feel it, right? You can't just move to Italy and then never talk about it again. But
Yeah.
if you need to do that to get over the gut wrenching horror that you feel
Yeah.
after, go for it, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
eventually it's going to catch up with you and it's probably going to catch up with you in your next relationship. So
Yeah.
we all handle it in different ways.
And that's such a great idea. Do something drastic that
Yeah,
takes you out of
100%.
that sit in the sock part, right? So you can, yeah, I
Yeah,
love
my
that.
last breakup, I moved to South America. I have this habit of leaving the country after breakups.
Just go for a
Go on a
certain
big
period
trip.
of time.
Yeah,
You
well,
just,
I work remotely. So South
okay.
America, I was working remotely for the whole time.
Okay.
Italy, I had just graduated college. I was young. So I just graduated college. I was between college and grad school, and I knew I was moving to Italy. I wanted to teach English abroad. But that was really the green light. Like, okay, I'm out of here. I need to go figure myself out. And I did. And, all of those things set me up for my life today. If I didn't move to Italy, that was my first time leaving the country by myself. It was my first time on a plane by myself. And I just went, I moved, I stood on immigration lanes at 3 o'clock in the morning waiting to get my paperwork. And,
Yeah.
I figured it out. I had nothing to lose at that point in my life. So standing on a line at 3 o'clock in the morning with, I don't know, big military people with machine guns just waiting
Yeah.
for us all to get in, I had nothing to lose. I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
And that gave me the space and the freedom to do big things that I never would have done otherwise. Right.
Oh my
And with that, I never would have been able to go to South America for 6 months by myself.
I can't
So,
imagine. I've thought about this so many times that, I'm in that limbo now where I'm like, I could
yeah,
do anything and I could go anywhere.
anything.
I thought like I could go be on a cruise ship for 6 months if I wanted to just be a cruise director and try that out. Or I could go, I thought about Italy and it's scary. It's scary. I'm like, oh my God, I've never gone on vacation by myself before. So like the thoughts of being in an entirely different country by myself is scary. But what an experience. And when
Yeah.
you do it, and then you're like, wow. And of course, I'm so head in the clouds with the movies, like Tuscan Sun, I think, where she goes and just meets
Yeah.
the sky in Italy is so perfect. That's what I think will happen. So that's
Yeah, I mean, it could. There's so many scenarios where that does happen, right? I've met people while abroad and I've dated people while abroad, and it is magical. There's a whole different element to it, and it doesn't feel like there's as much pressure, right? When you're here at home or wherever you live, there's a lot of pressure to really progress a relationship. But when you're just kind of gallivanting around in another continent, there's no pressure. There's no strings attached, right? You're just having fun and you're exploring and you're
yeah.
getting to know yourself and what you want out of this life.
Yeah.
And that's when your life begins.
Oh, you're selling me on it. I think I should just do it. Do it. Oh my gosh, well, I love having you join me today. This was such great information. I always love talking about just relationships as a whole and all of the little, nuances within them and speaking with different people. Everybody has, of course, their different perspective and advice on it, but it all comes down to the same thing of starting with loving yourself. That is the number one thing that is the common denominator amongst everyone I've spoken with. And
Yeah.
so tell me just before we go, like a couple things that someone could do just to start out feeling that self-love. What would be a couple advice things?
Yeah. Honestly, on the opposite of that, why do you not love yourself? Right?
Why
What do
not?
you not love about yourself and why?
Yeah.
Ask yourself why, right? When did that start? When did I start to think these things about myself? When did I start to feel these things about myself? And did it even come from me or did it come from someone else? Right? Start there. Really get to know why you've created yourself as the enemy and then figure out what you do love about yourself and then really lean into that. And
Yeah.
sometimes they overlap, right? I really hate my impulsivity, but you know what? My impulsivity brought me to all 7 continents this year. So, there's always two sides to every story. And just because you feel like you don't love something doesn't mean you're not going to love it forever. You just need to learn how to love it.
Yes. Great, great advice. So tell everybody where they can find you. Tell us all your goodies and your good stuff you've got going on.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's at lauracaruso.therapy. That one's strictly relationships, dating, all that jazz. And then I
Okay.
just started a TikTok. So that's my
Woo.
post breakup, normalizing the post breakup, starting over kind of mentality, right? It's
Okay.
circling around. I thought this was going to be my life partner. I thought we were going to get married. And now I'm turning 30 and I'm in New York and all my friends are getting married. So that's really the whole central theme of that
Yeah.
account. Same at lauracaruso.therapy. Other than that, you can find all my other links to my website, to my practice, everything on either of those channels.
I'll add everything in the show notes so they can find you very easily. So before you go, I like to play a little game from Mrs. to Ms. Would You Rather? It's just 10
Love it.
relationship type questions. Okay, number one, would you rather date someone who always plans the perfect dates or someone who surprises you with spontaneous adventures?
Ooh, that's a tough one because you just heard how adventurous I am.
Yeah.
I feel like spontaneous adventures, but I don't
Yeah.
want to know about the surprise. I just want to be told when it's happening because I hate surprises. I need to know.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a kind of a little bit of both. You like the spontaneity of it, but you want to know like at least what to pack and where to,
Yeah,
meet all the good stuff. You need to know that.
exactly.
I like that. Would you rather, here's a good one. Would you rather coach a couple trying to survive their first IKEA trip together or one navigating the emotional fallout of what do you want for dinner debates? So you've got IKEA, you're going to go
And
for dinner.
definitely what do you want for dinner? Because IKEA, I'm one of those people who taps out. By the time we get to like the kitchen section, I'm out. I'm
You
done.
can't find your way out. So you can
No,
be there
I'm
mentally,
done.
but you're not getting there anytime soon.
Yeah, there's too much to look at. It's too stressful and I'm exhausted.
It's a pure maze in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I get you on that one. Okay, number 3. Would you rather help someone find love through a traditional blind date or by navigating the complexities of a dating app match? So which yeah,
Honestly, I think blind date, because I think
yeah.
blind dates just feel so foreign at this point. I'm actually going on
Mhm.
a blind date soon, so I'm pretty excited about it. But
Stop. Tell me. So how's
yeah, it's so funny. So it actually started with a dating app. I messaged one of my friends who Raya is one of the big apps now as well, and you have to get the invite to Raya. So I obviously have not been in the dating game for a while. So I messaged my friend and I said, "Hey, will you be my Raya referral?" And he
yeah.
was asking all these questions now. He had just found out that I was single because of that. And he said, I used to live in the same building as him in New York City. And he said, "Have you ever met so and so in our building?" And I didn't. And he was like, "He's
Mhm.
this really gorgeous, tall Australian man." And
Hello.
this is one of my this is one of my friends who's like, sorry to the gay men out there. I love you guys. He's a classic gay man. And he's like, he's gorgeous. So he's gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
He's not lying.
Correct.
You can trust him. So yeah, I'm gonna go on a blind date and I'm excited about it.
This sounds like a hot date, Lace.
I'm very excited. I
When
was
is
like, if
this?
one of my gay male friends recommends, it's a good date. It's gonna
It's
be
a
a
good date.
good match.
This is next week you're doing this?
I think in 2 weeks. So we'll
Okay.
see.
Okay. Well, we're
We'll
going to need
see.
some follow up on that one. No, I mean anything on Australia. It's
Yes.
got to be
Yes.
good. The
Exactly.
accent, I mean, I took it to if he has a great Australian accent. Oh,
I'm excited.
yeah. So you're going to go with blind date over the dating apps. I do think, yeah, Raya is a really difficult one. I think I've been on that referral for 3 years. I don't even know. I've
Yeah.
been through relationships. I just didn't bother to get off because I knew I was never going to get in.
Right.
That was really good. But also, I think some other ones we could just mention. We like Hinge, I think is great. And Bumble. Of course, you can do friends and dates on there. And I don't know if you've tried Luxy as well as kind of a higher end dating app, which is very cool. And people of the same kind, like, that kind of make around the same money, same profession. So it's a little more.
Very cool. Very cool. That would be big in New York, I feel like. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
You should check it out. Luxy, Luxy. Okay.
Hmm.
Would you rather fall for someone who makes you laugh uncontrollably or someone who gives you butterflies every time they walk in the room?
Laugh uncontrollably. I think butterflies would feel a bit like digestion issues.
I always hear that the butterflies are more of a red flag, I guess, at
Yeah,
times.
it's a little bit more
Signaling.
anxiety.
But I do like that little, when you kiss
Yeah.
somebody and you see them and you're like, oh, what's going on? I do like that little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. And number 5, blindfolded surprises or playful role play.
Hmm. Blindfolded surprises, I think. I think
Okay,
role play kind of freaks me out sometimes.
me
It's like a
too.
little too much. I'm like, I can't commit to the bit. I'm not a serious person. I'm very playful and silly and
Uh,
fun, but I think that touches too much on the insecurity and the vulnerability for me.
I feel like I would just be really bad at it. Like if they're like, be a nurse, I'd be like, okay, well, what
Right.
that?
I was actually just talking to my girlfriends about this with like sexting because there are so many men out there who really want to sex. I was talking to my guy friends about it too, asking them, and they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we just love like waiting for the response. And I'm like, I'm sitting on my couch eating ice cream and like watching a movie. I'm not into it.
Right. I'm about to chat GPT this answer because
I've done it. I've done it.
I am not good on the fly like that, like coming up with something that's really good.
Hmm.
And I try to like put in, what I want to say and then have them rewrite it. But sexting makes me very uncomfortable.
That's hysterical that you've used ChatGPT because so have I. So if you're listening to this and you want to build comfort with sexting, you're like, oh, I'm kind of into it. I just don't know what to say and I feel awkward. I'll have ChatGPT. I'll like read the conversation of ChatGPT and say, give me 10 responses that I could
It's
choose from.
amazing.
And it helps like build your vocabulary, right? It's kind of like learning about emotions. You don't know how to talk about emotions until you have the vocabulary. So have
Yeah.
ChatGPT teach you how to sex. It's 2024.
And I think we're all doing it. Suddenly everybody's gotten so much better at sexting.
Yep.
Okay, number 6. Would you rather have the ability to read your partner's mind during sex or be able to control their sensations with just a touch?
Control their sensations. I don't want to know what they're thinking.
Nobody wants
No.
to know. Number 7, trying new positions or mastering the classics.
Hmm. I want to say mastering the classics because I feel like while I'm adventurous, I could still always just try new positions, but
Yeah,
why not? Like, why fix something if it's not broken?
agree. And sometimes I used to be like, oh, I just want to always do something new. And that is really hard to keep up.
It's
It's
exhausting.
exhausting. And then
It's
you start out
exhausting.
that way, and then they're always expecting something new. And then when
Yeah.
you just try the basics, they're like,
Yeah.
this is boring. It's, yeah,
Yeah.
not
It's not sustainable. I'm always that person who says, like, missionary is one of my favorites simply because of the connection, right? The amount of eye contact, the amount of rhythm, the amount of connection that it requires. There's a lot of people where missionary is not great with them, but when it's
Yeah,
good, it's great, right?
yeah, I agree. And if you don't want the connection, just flip over.
Exactly.
8, would you rather coach someone through surviving a partner's karaoke obsession or their refusal to share the last bite of dessert?
I feel like definitely karaoke because I think sharing the last bite, that's pretty personal. I would take offense to that. So I think karaoke is a safer bet to support someone through.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Number 9, would you rather help a client plan the most romantic, unforgettable date night or coach them through crafting the perfect flirty text? Not
Ooh,
using
flirty text for
ChatGPT.
sure. Flirty text for sure. I've helped clients drop so many texts in session. It's way too fun.
That is fun. And then you wait to get the response. It's so fun.
Yep, it's so
Good.
fun.
If you're on with it, it's really good. It can be really good.
Yep.
Last question, slow dancing in the living room or spontaneous dance moves in the kitchen?
Ooh, I think slow dancing in the living room, but I do live in New York, so my living room is my kitchen. Maybe both. It's a very fine line that divides the two.
Big answer.
Fine
Like,
line
well,
here.
now in the kitchen, let's.
And it's so funny because I have a 3-bedroom, so it's not like a small New York City apartment, but
Yeah.
the kitchen's the living room still.
Yeah, that's a classic. Awesome. Well, thank you for participating. That was a lot of fun. You had such great answers. I love it. Thank you once again for joining me, Laura. I loved having you. And everybody, I will put out the show notes so you know where to find her. She's got such great information, wonderful website. So go check it out. You can find me on any major streaming platform. Just look for From Mrs. to Ms. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, anything you want to know, email me at info@FromMrs.to Ms.net. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye.